Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive.
Yeah.
And today, we're going right to the source, baby. The art of the deal.
Ooh. Straight from the horse's mouth.
Yeah, you've heard the name, you've heard the buzz, but now we're going to figure out what made Donald Trump, well, Trump.
It's going to be interesting to look back at this book, especially given all that's happened since it came out.
Oh, yeah.
It gives you a glimpse into his business ventures and his mindset for deal making way before he even thought about getting into politics.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating look.
Yeah, and we're going beyond the headlines and the hype.
Right.
You know, we want to figure out what are the real takeaways from the art of the deal.
Exactly.
So think of this as your shortcut, you know, to understanding the Trump approach
Part of the deal.
from the source material.
That's right.
We're going to look at everything.
Before.
From those little anecdotes to the tactics he swears by.
Yeah,
And of course, we'll look back to his early life and see how he was influenced. Yeah.
absolutely.
So you ready to get into this?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Let's dive in.
Let's do it.
Okay.
So first, let's start with where it all began. Trump's early life and all those things that kind of shaped how we viewed business. The book spends a bunch of time talking about his father, Fred Trump, who was also a really successful real estate developer.
Right. And the book even highlights
Yeah.
how different their two approaches to business were.
Yeah.
You know, Fred was focused on building affordable housing in Brooklyn and Queens, which, you know, some people might say is a more conservative approach.
But it's very different.
And then you have Donald, who was drawn to the allure of Manhattan.
The glamour.
Yeah, you
and
know,
glitz.
the big high-profile projects
Mhm.
that promised prestige and glamour.
Right.
You know, it's interesting. There's an anecdote about Fred visiting the Trump Tower construction site.
Oh, yeah.
And, I mean, they were using these expensive bronze, you know, solar glass panels for the facade.
Yeah.
And Fred, being the pragmatist that he was, suggested just using like cheaper brick instead.
Can you imagine?
Can you imagine Trump Tower with a brick facade?
I mean, it's kind of funny to picture.
It really is.
It's
Yeah.
hilarious.
It really highlights the difference in their mindsets.
Exactly. You know,
Yeah.
Fred was all about practicality, keeping costs down.
Yeah.
And then you have Donald, who, even back then,
Yeah.
was focused on creating something iconic,
Right.
luxurious,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of the cost.
That ambition,
Yeah.
that think big mentality, I mean, that was ingrained in Donald Trump right from the beginning.
Yeah.
And this theme runs throughout the entire book.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the foundations of how he makes deals.
He places a lot of importance on setting ambitious goals
Mhm.
and not letting the fear of success, hold you back.
Yeah.
He thinks a lot of people think too small, and that's where he gets his edge.
Right.
But he doesn't just throw caution to the wind, though, does he?
He doesn't. He's actually pretty conservative
Yeah.
when it comes to risk.
He's always stressing the importance of protecting the downside.
Yeah.
Meaning always looking out for the worst case scenario and planning ahead.
I find that really counterintuitive.
Mm.
You know, you have this bold, larger-than-life persona, but then you find out
Right.
he's a shrewd businessman
Yeah.
who's meticulously, you know,
Yeah.
calculating the risks and planning for contingencies.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, even the most calculated plans sometimes can go wrong.
Yeah, definitely. And he
Yeah.
talks about that openly. He talks about investing in the USFL,
Oh, yeah.
this football league that wanted to be like the NFL.
Yeah.
It was a big move, a huge gamble, and in the end, a big financial loss for him.
Yeah, it's fascinating because he admits that's one time where he didn't follow his own principle of protecting the downside.
Right.
Like, he let his competitive spirit and desire to shake things up override his usual caution. It's a good reminder that even the most successful people can make mistakes.
Oh, yeah. Everyone makes mistakes.
For sure.
But going back to his core strategies, another principle he talks about is maximizing your options.
Yeah.
He believes in having multiple deals going on at the same time, always having backup plans in case one falls through.
It's like he's always playing chess,
Yeah.
thinking many moves ahead.
Right.
Yeah.
Anticipating his opponent's reactions.
Yeah, and preparing for every outcome.
Absolutely. He uses Trump Tower as an example. He says he could have easily switched to an office building if the whole residential thing didn't work out.
Wow. So he's all about
Flexibility,
Yeah.
not getting stuck on one path and adapting to whatever happens.
Yeah.
And that ties into another thing he does really well, leverage.
Yeah.
He's great at using it to his advantage,
Yeah.
whether it's through public pressure or working with the right people or just figuring out the other side's needs and weaknesses.
I think a great example of that is the Commodore Hotel deal,
Yeah.
which later became the Grand Hyatt.
Right.
The Commodore was this like rundown, almost forgotten hotel
Oh.
right near Grand Central Terminal. Trump saw the potential,
He did.
but he needed the city to give him a massive tax break to make it all work.
Yeah.
How did he pull that off?
Well, he used the fact that the hotel and the area around it was in such bad shape to his advantage.
Okay.
He said that without the tax break, the hotel would close, jobs would be lost, and the whole area would just get worse.
So he played hardball.
He did, but it worked.
He's not afraid to apply pressure, make things clear,
No, he's not.
and use his position to get what he wants.
Right.
And it's interesting how he combines that with his charm
Yeah.
and negotiation skills.
Solid.
I mean, he even got Hyatt, a huge hotel chain, to partner with him.
Right.
That added even more weight to what he was asking for. It takes some serious charisma to pull that off.
It does. He's great at selling his vision and convincing people to take a chance on him,
Yeah.
even when things seem impossible.
Yeah.
That's something you see over and over in the book.
Okay.
He finds opportunities others miss or think are too risky, and then he goes after them relentlessly, using everything he can to make them happen.
And what's interesting is that he seems to have this almost instinctive understanding of the market.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's super skeptical of traditional market research.
Yeah.
He'd rather trust his gut and do informal surveys.
It's definitely not the usual way of doing things.
Not at all.
Yeah.
It goes against everything we're taught about data-driven decision-making.
Yeah.
But for Trump, it's all about trusting his judgment and his ability to read people.
Right.
And you know what? Despite the flashy persona and the aggressive tactics,
Yeah.
he always emphasizes actually delivering on what he promises.
Yes, he makes a clear distinction
Yeah.
between himself and those who just talk a big game but don't follow through.
Mm-hmm.
He truly believes long-term success comes from keeping promises and being known as reliable.
Yeah, he even talks about this awkward encounter he had with former President Jimmy Carter.
Oh, yeah. What happened?
So after leaving office, Carter asked Trump for a $5 million donation for his presidential library.
Wow.
Yeah, and Trump was kind of shocked by the request.
Really?
He saw it as a perfect example of someone who cared more about appearances than substance.
Interesting.
Yeah, and he contrasts himself with that, saying basically, look, I might be loud and unconventional, but at least I get things done.
Right.
And that brings us to some of the other really interesting deals he talks about in the book. Each one has its own set of challenges and successes.
Yeah.
We talked about the Commodore, but there's also the story of how he bought the Bonwit Teller site,
Oh, yeah.
which eventually became Trump Tower.
Yeah.
That was a complicated one,
Hey, was it?
involving air rights and zoning negotiations, and of course, a healthy dose of Trump's flair for the dramatic.
Of course.
It's a classic example of how he spots an opportunity, gets the right people together, and then goes after his vision no matter what.
Absolutely.
And then there's his move into Atlantic City.
Oh, yeah, the casinos.
Yeah, he gets into the casino market,
That's right.
and he talks about all the difficulties of securing those licenses,
Right.
navigating that complex world of casino regulations,
Yeah. Absolutely.
and then ultimately taking over the Hilton Casino.
That's wild.
It's a whole different level of deal-making.
It is.
High stakes, fierce competition.
Yeah.
And he always had to stay ahead of everyone else.
Right.
And we can't forget about the USFL,
Oh, yeah.
the football league, which, despite his early success, ended up in a legal battle
Right.
and a huge financial setback for Trump.
It just shows that not every deal works out,
Yeah.
even for someone as sharp as Donald Trump.
Each one of these deals gives us a peek into his strategies, how much risk he's willing to take, and that unwavering determination to succeed. They paint this picture of a businessman willing to push the limits, take chances, and fight like crazy for what he believes in.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
It is.
Sometimes confusing.
Right.
Journey through this world of high-stakes deals.
Well, absolutely.
But there's still more to discover. Stick with us as we go deeper into the art of the deal.
Yeah.
We're going to look at even more stories, analyze his tactics, and really figure out
Yeah.
what drives his success.
I'm ready for more.
All right, let's get into it. We were just talking about some of Trump's biggest deals, and, you know,
Yeah.
it just hit me that a lot of his wins seem to happen after someone else messes up. Like he comes in and saves the day when everyone else is stumped.
Yeah, you're right.
It's like he thrives on fixing other people's problems.
He does seem to enjoy that challenge.
Yeah, and a perfect example of that is
Yeah.
the Woolman Rink renovation.
Oh, yeah, that was a classic.
This project was stuck for years.
Yeah.
Delays, cost overruns.
Yeah, the city just couldn't get it done.
And then Trump swoops in and says, hey, I'll take over the project, and I'll even pay for it myself.
I mean, that's classic Trump right there.
Totally.
He saw a golden opportunity
Yeah.
where everyone else saw a potential disaster,
Yeah.
and he used his public image and his negotiation skills to get things moving again.
It's brilliant.
It is, and the craziest part is he finished the renovation months ahead of schedule and under budget.
Wow, that's impressive.
It is.
I mean, it really solidified his reputation as a man of action.
Yeah.
The guy who could cut through all the red tape
Right.
and get things done when the government couldn't.
Exactly. And that's a powerful image to have, especially when you're dealing with these public projects.
Absolutely.
And you see this theme over and over in the book.
Okay.
Trump presents himself as the ultimate problem solver, the guy you call when everyone else has given up.
Yeah.
But beyond those big accomplishments, the art of the deal is full of these smaller, more personal stories that really show you what he's like.
Yeah, for sure. Like the story about Irving,
Oh, yeah, Irving.
the property manager at Swifton Village. Trump's first big real estate purchase.
Yeah, Irving was a character.
He's described as this almost legendary figure,
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant manager,
Yeah.
but with a tendency to bend the rules, shall we say.
Let's just say he had his own way of doing things.
Yeah. Trump even admits that Irving was skimming money from him,
He did.
but he put up with it because Irving was just that good at his job. He knew how to make things happen,
Yeah.
even if it meant operating in a bit of a gray area.
So he was willing to overlook some things as long as the results were there.
Exactly. There's this one scene where a contractor shows up at the office, furious, threatening to beat up Irving.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and Irving, this short, unassuming guy, starts yelling about how his hands are registered as lethal weapons with the police.
I can't even imagine.
It's such a ridiculous situation.
It really is.
But it shows you that even back then, Trump was willing to work with unconventional people if they could get the job done.
It's definitely a sign of his pragmatism.
Yeah.
He's less concerned with what's right or wrong in the traditional sense
Yeah.
and more focused on what works.
Results over everything.
You could say the ends justify the means.
And that brings up a really interesting question.
What's that?
Is Trump's success because of his natural talent and business skills? Or is it more about his ability to work within a system that rewards that kind of ruthlessness?
That's a tough question, and I don't think there's an easy answer. The book definitely makes it seem like he's got this unique blend of ambition instincts and a talent for reading people,
Yeah.
but it also shows that he's not afraid to exploit loopholes, push boundaries, and even intimidate his opponents.
It's a complicated picture.
It is, and the book doesn't try to hide those more controversial parts of his approach.
No, it doesn't.
He's very open about his aggressive tactics, his view that negotiations are battles to be won, and his belief that showing weakness is the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, there's that famous line where he says he loves to fight back,
Oh, yeah.
and he calls people who don't share that same fighting spirit losers.
Right.
It's that uncompromising win-at-all-costs mindset
Yeah.
that defines how he does business.
And how he approaches politics, too.
It seems like it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part in the book where he talks about using exaggeration and hyperbole to promote your projects, create
Yeah.
excitement, and generate buzz.
Mm-hmm.
He even suggests that truthful hyperbole is a legitimate marketing strategy.
It's that blurring of the lines between truth and fiction that's made him both successful and controversial.
Definitely.
His supporters love his boldness and how he challenges the norm,
Right.
while his critics see him as a manipulator who twists reality to benefit himself.
Yeah, it's that ambiguity, that back and forth between his strengths and weaknesses. That makes him so fascinating.
He's definitely a complex character.
He is, and The Art of the Deal gives us this really interesting look at where that personality comes from.
It's a valuable insight, for sure. But let's move on to another one of his deals.
Okay.
Tell me about the Bonwit-Teller acquisition. How did he manage to get that prime real estate for Trump Tower?
Oh, yeah, the Bonwit-Teller deal.
That was a big one.
That was a tough one.
It was.
It involved a lot of tricky moves. He had to be patient and understand leverage. The owner, Walter Hoving, was known for being difficult to work with.
Oh, yeah. He had a reputation.
Yeah, Trump knew that just going in and making an offer wouldn't work.
Right.
So he started by offering to lease the property.
Oh, interesting.
So Hoving could still feel like he was in control.
That was smart.
It was a strategic move. It gave him time to build a relationship with Hoving
Right.
and figure out what he really cared about.
Classic negotiation tactic.
Exactly. He played the long game.
He did.
He learned that Hoving was really worried about protecting the legacy of Tiffany & Co., which had a store right next to Bonwit-Teller.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And then he unveiled his big plan, Trump Tower.
Bold, ambitious,
Yeah.
and perfectly placed to capture the energy of Fifth Avenue.
Exactly.
He showed Hoving these architectural models to give him a sense of what the site could look like. He emphasized how the design of Trump Tower would actually make Tiffany's store even more visible and prestigious.
That's clever.
He appealed to Hoving's ego and his desire to protect the Tiffany brand.
Wow.
But of course, he didn't stop there.
No, of course not. What else did he do?
Yeah. He also made it clear that if Hoving didn't agree to the deal, he'd be forced to build right up to the edge of the property, potentially blocking Tiffany's windows and making their store less noticeable from Fifth Avenue.
So it was a combination of a tempting offer and a subtle threat.
Exactly, the classic carrot and stick approach.
And it worked.
It did.
Hoving eventually gave in. Trump got the air rights, tore down the Bonwit Teller building, and built his iconic tower.
Which changed the look of Fifth Avenue forever.
It did. It's a testament to his persistence,
Absolutely.
his ability to anticipate problems,
Mm-hmm.
and his knack for finding creative solutions that benefit everyone.
Even if it takes a bit of pressure.
Exactly. You see this pattern throughout the book.
Yeah.
He sets a goal, figures out the situation,
Right?
and then methodically removes any obstacles,
Yeah.
using a mix of charm, persuasion, and strategic pressure.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
And maybe a little ruthless,
Yeah.
but it's how he gets things done.
It is. We're really starting to understand the man behind the myth. You know, his strategies,
Mm-hmm.
his ambition, his drive to achieve his goals.
It's all laid out there, but it's not all glitz and glamour and high-rises.
Right.
The art of the deal also takes us to Atlantic City,
Oh, yeah.
where Trump built his casino empire.
It's a different world compared to Manhattan real estate.
It is. It's a lot grittier.
Yeah, Atlantic City in the early 80s was like the Wild West.
Yeah, it was a boom town,
Yeah.
fueled by gambling.
Yeah, everyone wanted a piece of the action.
They did.
And the competition for licenses and prime locations was intense.
It was a whole different ballgame.
It was, and Trump, being Trump,
Yeah.
dove right into that chaos.
Head first.
And his experiences in Atlantic City show us yet another side of his deal-making personality. So Atlantic City was like a whole different world compared to Manhattan, you know?
Oh, yeah, it was a completely different beast.
What were some of the main challenges Trump had to deal with in that environment?
Well, the competition was fierce. Everyone wanted in on the action, from the big established casino guys to all these new ambitious players. Just getting a gaming license was the first big hurdle. And the process was super strict: background checks, financial investigations, you name it, they scrutinized everything.
That sounds pretty tough,
Mm.
especially for someone like Trump, who was used to doing things his own way.
It was definitely an adjustment for him. He had to play by their rules, navigate all these regulations, and convince the Casino Control Commission that he was the right guy for the job, even though he didn't have any experience with casinos.
Yeah, and he wasn't exactly known for being patient with bureaucracy.
Not really.
So did he manage to get through that whole licensing process without any hiccups?
Not exactly. He hit some roadblocks early on. His first try at getting a license for Trump Plaza was met with some serious skepticism. The commission questioned his finances, pointed out some past business setbacks, and they were worried about his aggressive business style.
So how did he turn things around?
He basically leaned into his strengths, highlighted his success in real estate, emphasized how committed he was to creating jobs and revitalizing Atlantic City, and presented himself as this visionary leader who could bring a fresh perspective to the industry.
So a bit of persuasion, a bit of persistence,
Yeah,
and a healthy dose of Trump's showmanship.
exactly. He turned the whole hearing into a chance to promote his vision. He was selling himself as the ultimate deal maker, the guy who could make Atlantic City a world-class destination.
And it worked.
It did.
He got the license for Trump Plaza
Mm-hmm.
and went on to build several other casinos in Atlantic City.
He did.
But you mentioned earlier that he tried to get a license for the Hilton Casino, and that didn't work out.
Yeah, that's a really interesting story. It's kind of a case study in how not to approach the whole regulatory process.
But what happened?
Well, Hilton was a huge brand with a global reputation, so everyone thought they'd get a license, no problem. But they made some big mistakes that cost them big time.
Like what? What did they do?
Well, they hired this lawyer with strong political ties, thinking they could influence the commission.
Oh, wow.
But that backfired completely. It made it look like they were trying to cheat the system.
Ouch.
Yeah, and they also didn't bother to talk to the local community and address their concerns about having another casino in town.
So they kind of just assumed that their name and influence would be enough.
It seems that way. They didn't understand how things worked, and they ended up alienating the very people they needed on their side.
That's a big mistake.
It is.
And Trump saw an opportunity.
Oh, yeah. He was watching the whole thing unfold.
Yeah.
And when Hilton's application got rejected, he swooped in and bought the casino.
Yeah.
For a fraction of what it would cost them with a license.
Wow. So he turned their failure into his own win.
That's Trump for you.
He's always looking for an angle.
He is.
But his success in Atlantic City wasn't just about being clever or outsmarting his rivals.
Right.
The book talks about how detail-oriented he was.
Yeah.
His drive to be the best and his understanding of what people want.
He describes how obsessed he was with making these over-the-top luxurious casinos. He spared no expense on anything. Lavish interiors, top-notch amenities, world-class entertainment. He wanted to create an experience that people would travel for.
Yeah, he knew that in the casino world, image is everything. You got to create that buzz, that feeling of excitement and exclusivity to get people to open their wallets.
Exactly. He knew people weren't just coming to gamble. They wanted an escape, a fantasy, a chance to indulge.
And Trump was ready to deliver.
He was.
It's interesting how The Art of the Deal shows us this other side of Trump, this artistic side when it comes to creating these experiences. It goes beyond just making money.
It does.
It's about making something spectacular, something with his name on it.
It's about that showmanship, that desire to be the best and to be recognized for it.
And it was that drive, that ambition, that took him from real estate and casinos to the world of politics.
It did.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we have.
From his early life and his principles to specific deals and stories that show how he operates.
Right.
What would you say are the biggest takeaways from The Art of the Deal, the essential parts of the Trump playbook?
I think the first thing is that unshakable belief in himself. That confidence that some might even call arrogance.
Yeah.
He always talks about thinking big, setting ambitious goals, and never letting doubt or fear hold you back.
It's like he wills things into existence.
It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
He believes he can do anything, and that belief becomes his biggest weapon.
That's powerful.
It is.
Yes.
The second thing is his mastery of leverage. He knows how to use power dynamics to his advantage, whether it's through public pressure, strategic partnerships, or finding and exploiting his opponent's weaknesses.
He's a master negotiator, always looking for an edge.
Yeah.
Always pushing for the best deal, even if it means bending the rules or playing dirty.
He's definitely not afraid to get his hands dirty.
And lastly,
his relentless focus on results. He might be flashy, he might be controversial, but he gets things done. He delivers on his promises, even if it means cutting corners or operating in those gray areas.
it's fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
This complex, often contradictory picture of a man who defied expectations and changed the world in his own way. Whether you love him or hate him, you can't deny that Donald Trump is a force of nature.
You can't.
And The Art of the Deal, even though it was written so long ago, gives us a really valuable way to understand him.
Yeah.
His motivations, his strategies, and his lasting impact on American culture and politics. So, as you continue to explore the world of deal-making, remember the lessons from The Art of the Deal. Think big, use your leverage, and never be afraid to fight for what you want. But also remember to think about the ethics of your actions and the potential consequences of always playing to win. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into The Art of the Deal.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.